Okay, I didn't get to finish this one, but the time lag hypothesis, remember, is the idea that the environment we live in now is not the same as the environment in which our brains evolved several, maybe tens, hundreds of thousands of years ago. Modern society is full of stresses which didn't exist. So I was discussing the diurnal sleep pattern. We sleep during the day, and we are awake during the day and we sleep during the night. The reason for that is that our eyes aren't particularly good at working at night, so there's no point in being up foraging because we can't forage, and there are predators with far better eyesight or which can hunt us by smell, which are liable to eat us. So it makes sense for us to kind of hide away and disappear, in a cave or wherever it is at night, and spend our time waking during the day. Now, modern life, of course, has demands that certain people work through the night and sleep during the day, and this is extremely difficult. Sleep during the day because our brains just haven't evolved to do that. So sleep during the day is always going to be of lower quality than sleep during the night. So people who work during the night can often suffer physical and psychological illnesses as a result of their nocturnal rather than diurnal sleeping arrangements. Even worse if we have shift work where we're working nights one week and days the next week, where we continually alternate that pattern of working nights and days, which again can cause problems because even to some extent, even if we're working all the time at night, our brains can a little bit get used to that. Not perfectly, but they can. But if we continue disrupting our sleep, so it's day and night every alternate week, then that can cause problems. So many of the things that we exhibit now, various toxins that we have now, lifestyles we have now, modern stressors, maybe we're not adapted to these, so we struggle with modern day society. And we can see this in at least one of the explanations of depression, which we'll look at later on. If we look at some of the explanation for some of the specific disorders, anxiety disorders are an interesting one because anxiety is an absolutely good thing. Anxiety is a fear response to things which are threatening, to threats in the environment, and we would hopefully want to respond adaptively to these threats by either running away from them or at least being vigilant towards them to make sure that they're not going to physically harm us in any way. And it's better to be vigilant towards a non-threat than to ignore a threat. So this is the kind of idea that our anxiety system is kind of based a bit like a smoke detector. So the worst thing of all, as Ness and Williams rather ironically put it, the cost of getting killed even once is enormously higher than the cost of responding to 100 false alarms. So anxiety is not a bad thing at all, because it's better for the smoke alarm to go off when there's a bit of burnt toast a few times, annoying that might be, than it is for the smoke alarm not to go off when there's a potentially lethal fire. And our anxiety system, it says, has been tuned exactly that way. We want to avoid failing to respond to important events rather than being ultra conservative and saying something has to be a real threat before we actually ever respond to it for this very reason. So anxiety can be a problem in many respects. But anxiety itself is actually, or fear, as we might probably want to call it, is actually a perfectly adaptive response. Now, some people are high in trait anxiety, which makes them likely to be suffer more of the negative consequences of anxiety, being unable to live a normal life. So they might be anxious about social situations or things like that, which can obviously impede their life. But overall, this cost of the impediment on your life is outweighed by ancestrally the possibility of meeting important threats. So anxiety is a good thing, and disordered anxiety is just an extreme case of this good thing. And in an ancestral situation, there would have been more threats. Nowadays, of course, there are fewer threats to our life, or there are other kinds of threats. So it may well be that there's a kind of time lag here, that we evolved in a world which was full of predators. We evolved this very, very ultra unconservative anxiety mechanism, which made us look for threats that may have been there in the ancestral past. Nowadays, we're looking for threats that aren't there because life for most people, at least in the West, is more secure, less likely to be murdered. So this is the kind of time lag as to why anxiety might happen. Depression is another one, and at least some research suggests that depression is a very, very social phenomenon, and it's a result of a loss of social status. Rayleigh and Maguire did a really nice study in which they got a bunch of vervet monkeys, and vervet monkeys live in a hierarchically organised group in which there are high-ranking monkeys and low-ranking monkeys, and there's an alpha male, and there's a bunch of lower-ranking monkeys. And when you measure the levels of serotonin in these high-ranking monkeys, you find that these high-ranking monkeys have twice the levels of serotonin of those ranked lower in the pecking order. In these kind of societies, alpha males naturally at some point will get deposed by a stronger male or a more intelligent male. As soon as an alpha male is deposed, then there's an observed drop of serotonin, and these monkeys show symptoms of depression, so refusal to eat, social withdrawal, and so on. So this could be a deferral. It's a survival mechanism because it prevents conflict. Let me explain what I mean here. Similar to the argument I made about displays when I did the lecture on emotion, in that conflict is costly. Physical conflict is costly. Even the winner can often suffer severe injuries as a result of conflict. So our psychologists have largely have evolved, not just us, but other animals have largely evolved to avoid conflict. So if an alpha male has been deposed, if that deposed alpha male continually tries to re-establish his dominance, even though he's just been deposed by a stronger or more intelligent male, then that might ultimately lead to the former alpha male's death as a result of conflict. So this kind of depression, this withdrawal, this social withdrawal, reduces conflict and prevents that monkey potentially keep trying to re-establish his dominance with the potentially lethal consequences to him. We know that depression can be alleviated at least partially by so-called selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors such as Prozac, SSRIs. And indeed, if an alpha male is removed from a colony, so you've got a colony with an alpha male, if you remove the alpha male from that colony, then what then happens is there's a kind of competition among the remaining males to become the dominant male. If they remove a male and injected a randomly selected male with an SSRI, so gave him Prozac, in every case they did this male with the boosted serotonin becomes alpha, suggesting again that serotonin is strongly related to social rank, and depression is strongly associated, because depression is associated with serotonin, and depression is strongly associated with a loss of social rank. The question is, though, this can seem to be adaptive when we're talking about monkeys and things like that as a deferral mechanism. But depression in humans often goes beyond that. It can lead to suicide. So the deferral mechanism can explain human depression to a certain extent, but human depression seems to go beyond what we find in other non-human primates, because they don't tend to kill themselves. So why is there another contributing factor, as well as this notion of social withdrawal and loss of hierarchy, which might lead to our studying depression? Before I go to that, I should mention that examples of loss of social status in humans would be losing a job, losing a partner, relationship breakdown, would be death, a bereavement of a relative. All of these can lead to a loss of rank and social status, and all these things are associated with depression. Well, there's a time-like hypothesis which may work with that idea of the loss of social rank, which suggests that maybe today's life is more stressful and more likely to lead to depression and anxiety than it might have been in the past. And our best guess is that we evolved in social groups of approximately 150 people, something like that. In that particular group, the number of people there is very small, so the number of social comparisons we can make is extremely limited. Probably, if we're in a group of 150 people, we would probably be good at something, best at something. We might be the most attractive, the best musician, the most intelligent person, the best spear maker, the funniest person, the best storyteller. There's something that we're going to be good at. We're going to have a talent, and we're probably going to be best at something, or at least nearly as good as the best at something. As Ness and Williams suggest, that modern society makes us all one big group. We're continually bombarded with images of beautiful people. We're continually bombarded with images of very successful people, of funny people, of rich people, of talented musicians, of talented artists, which kind of makes our efforts look pretty meagre. I might well be the best guitar player on my street, but I'm most certainly not the greatest guitar player in all of Sheffield. I'm certainly not the best guitar player in the world. So if I want to go onto YouTube and have a look at what young guitar players or even old guitar players are doing, I'm likely to be kind of completely blown away by some 15-year-old kid playing some amazing guitar. Well, how does that make me feel? It makes me feel like giving the damn thing up. So having these images of perfection continually bombarding us leads to us to compare ourselves with other people who are better than us, and can lead to it's almost like an artificial loss of social status. We're no longer particularly good at something. We're in fact terrible at something compared to, as it seems, pretty much everybody. So this can contribute towards this aforementioned loss of social status and make things even worse. So pictures in a study by Kendrick and Simpson, if you give pictures of potential desirable potential mates and then ask people to rate how attractive their current partner is, then what you find is if you give people pictures of attractive potential mates, they become increasingly dissatisfied with their current partner, and we can extrapolate that to if we see pictures of attractive cars, we become increasingly dissatisfied with our car, or houses become dissatisfied with our house, or good guitarists become dissatisfied with our musical ability. So we kind of basically feel that we're on the bottom in the kind of social hierarchy, which can lead to this reduction of social status and depression. Psychopathy is an interesting one, and people have tried to explain psychopathy as being adaptive in the sense that impaired social emotions. Psychopaths are manipulative, commit a great deal of crime, and are sexually promiscuous. It's been seen that this could be a kind of free rider strategy, that these are individuals who have become successful by basically operating a cheating strategy. They do not, so reciprocators will take the benefit but pay the cost. So you help me out, I'll help you out. Psychopaths will take the benefit but not repay the individual back. So they're basically benefiting at the expense of others. So it's a kind of parasitic lifestyle which they do. So in a society made up primarily of reciprocators, genes for cheaters can enter the population and remain. Psychopaths obviously have lots of negative traits such as murder and all these kind of things, but these are in the minimum. Most psychopaths don't kill. Most of them do live exploitative lifestyles, and this is where the possibility of adaptation is here. We know that the heritability of psychopathy is high, so there's a 67% heritable, depending on which study you read, but it's somewhere like that. So there seems to be genes which contribute towards psychopathy. One possible gene which is involved in this is the MOAOA gene, which codes for an enzyme called monoase oxidase A. If you've got a particular version of this gene, it seems to make you more aggressive. This is the so-called warrior gene. So it predisposes the individual to violence. So this predisposes you to violence, but you also need a particular environment in which psychopaths can grow up. If a psychopath grows up in an environment which is anonymous, which contains abuse, lack of opportunities, then that can lead the individual who has this particular gene to start developing the traits of psychopathy. If, on the other hand, you're in an environment which is fairly stable and doesn't contain these particular traits, traits, then you may be less likely to develop psychopathy. So it's a bit like the stuff on life history theory and the developmental screencast, where what we're saying here is that lack of opportunities, anonymous existence, and all this kind of thing are predicting that your life is going to be short. So you adopt what might be called you maximize current reproductive success. If you look at that in that screencast if you want, on development, or what's called sometimes called a fast life history style. So a combination of the gene and this particular environment makes you live an exploitative and manipulative strategy, which makes you live a parasitic existence.